Greetings! 'Tis the season for natural disasters. Much of the country was recently buried in blizzards and millions went without power. Spring might be in the air, but winter isn't over yet for most of the country. More snow, cold temperatures, and high winds are still yet to come, followed closely by thunderstorms, monsoons, hurricane, and tornado season. Are you prepared to go without power for hours or even days? If you don't have mad electrical skills to build your own DIY solar backup system, what is the best option for you? We compare my home DIY backup system alongside of EcoFlow's latest offering. Both are being run 24/7 right here on my property simultaneously, which in the end can be cheaper and faster to implement. You may be surprised. Let's find out.
HOBOTECH.
First, a quick little story. Last Easter, in April, we had this massive blizzard come in that dumped 13 inches of snow overnight and knocked out the power for nearly 12 hours, broke a bunch of my trees, knocked out power lines. There were lots of accidents and all kinds of stuff that happened all over the neighborhood. I had to stay up all night to make sure that the power stayed on by feeding generator in the generator because I didn't have enough batteries. I also had no fuel generator at the time that I could just plug in and run 240 volt power to run the house because the main house mini split requires 240 volts. That was my mistake putting it in. I should have put 120 volt in, but now it's too late. The temperatures were in the single digits to low teens that night, and I am trudging through the snow trying to keep power stations running, to keep power on, to keep the heat going. So that was a big lesson learned for me that I wasn't prepared enough. I did a power audit by looking at my power bill online in the dead of winter when we use the most power here to see how much power I needed to make it off the grid for a full 24 hours, assuming there was no sunlight because my solar panels were covered the next morning and I was out there with a broom trying to brush off as much of the snow as I could. I decided that I needed to seriously upgrade my main battery bank from 20 kilowatt hours to 70 kilowatt hours, or a 50 kilowatt hour jump. I also needed to expand the EcoFlow system I had in place with larger batteries and upgrade to their newest DPUX, or Delta Pro Ultra X model, as part of a review of their product, along with upgrading from their Smart Home Panel 2 to Smart Home Panel 3. So why do I need so much power here? Well, I have several acres in the Arizona mountains, and over the past 5 years, it has been under constant construction. It's under construction today. I just added 2 more rooms to my main house, along with another mini split, 120 volts of course, and recently finished adding a bathroom onto my separate game room building. So I now have about a half a dozen buildings that have power on the property. So what I do is I split the load into 2 separate systems since one inverter could never handle all of it. I'm also a strong believer of 2 is 1 and 1 is none. I have my system set up so that either can run the entire property in an emergency if one were to fail. I would obviously have to shut some things off. And we just have to back off some of the larger loads such as the electric water heaters. Those are the biggest culprits of electricity gobbling around here because I have 2 big electric water heaters. I do have grid power available on this property, so it's not off-grid, but I try to run as off-grid as possible to avoid the $500 plus a month electric bill. My property is fully electric with a small exception for a guest bathroom that I installed an instant propane water heater in, and this is where my family could shower or get unlimited hot water if necessary in an extended outage without running the twin battery hungry water heaters. We can also now do laundry, full wash, full dry, using only regular 120 volts with a combo heat pump washer dryer. I got the Samsung one, so that 50 amp 240 volt hookup for our clothes dryer is no longer needed. Let me tell you that if you can afford one of these new heat pump washer dryer combos, you're not going to regret it. It does take twice as long to do a load of laundry, up to 4 to 6 hours per load, but the electric and water savings is amazing, and it doesn't need to be vented to the outside. Everything is push one button, forget it, washes, dries, opens the door, and actually text messages you and say your laundry's done, come get me. I mean, it doesn't get any more simple than that. Now, we still do have a 240 volt 50 amp oven, but rarely use it, as we've moved to using a large countertop air fryer that can bake without heating up the whole house in summer. And I actually bought one for my RV too, because that's the worst thing you want to do is be camping in the summer and heat up your RV while you're cooking. So that's another appliance everybody should have if you want to cook on battery power, along with an Instant Pot, microwave, add an electric kettle, an induction cooktop. You can literally make any meal on a small 4 kilowatt inverter. And that's the point I'm getting to with all this blabbering. If you change your appliances to more efficient ones, or at least have lower powered alternatives on hand that you can use in an emergency, you can make it through most extended power outages unscathed, assuming you have a battery backup system installed, which most people, even after this insane winter where millions lost power, still have not gotten a battery backup system. So here is my main home backup inverter. It's equivalent to an EG4 18K. And as big as it is, it still can't run everything on this property all the time. The inverter by itself is about $6,000, and the 4 batteries inside this fancy case with the case is about another $7,500 if you shop around. So if you include the cabling cost, because they don't include any cables, you got to make your own, and several hours of labor to install, this is easily, what you're seeing right here, these 2 pieces is easily $14,000. And this is for 20 kilowatt hours. If you need permits or want to grid tie and you need an electrician, add a couple $1,000s more, so you're looking at 15 to 16K, all said and done. The recent addition of 50 kilowatt hours to the battery bank was actually a lot cheaper, because I went with eco-worthy batteries and grabbed them on sale. Now those eco-worthies are down here, and then there's a rack at the very end. You can barely make it out down at the very end of this rack. I just put those in a couple of weeks ago. So the rack with the 6 batteries at the very end was an additional $5,200. That includes a rack with the bus bars. And then the 4 batteries down here, I received those to review, but those would have cost another $3,400. And then to install all the proper cabling, you can probably see some of the cabling I got going on here. With bus bars, fuses, a switch, it was about $500 extra just for the cables and switches and fuses. Took me about 5 nights of stripping these heavy welding cables, hydraulic crimping the 20 odd plus cables to complete. So contrary to what you're going to hear elsewhere, there is no such thing as a 1-hour build when it comes to putting together a whole home system from components. You'd also be pretty darn good at cutting and crimping large cables, have the equipment and the strength to do it properly. And that includes heat shrink tubing every single crimp that you do. I can only manage about 2.5 hours a night of actual crimping due to arthritis I have in my hands. So I did the cables in several batches. The final night included all the wrench twisting and fuse installing and screwing everything down. And the reason why I'm telling you this is that there are easier ways to install a whole home backup system that involves no welding cable cutting or heavy crimping or fusing, and can actually be installed in a single day, assuming you already have everything on hand ready to go. Now, before we get to that, I want to tell you one other problem I ran into with this DIY piecemeal system that almost got me into serious trouble with my power company. And that is the fact that out of the box, these home inverters, a lot of the EG4s and EG4 clones and a lot of the other brands do this, that have grid tie ability, don't actually turn off the grid tie part even when you set them to 0 export mode. And I found this out the hard way when I got a really nasty threatening letter from my electric company saying that I was illegally feeding back into the grid when I certainly wasn't. They had literally threatened to shut off my power if I didn't succumb to one of their invasive inspections by the end of that month, which was like 2.5 weeks away. I immediately contacted them, got the inspection. They did some tests to see if this actually was feeding back into the grid and didn't find anything at that time. However, my smart meter said otherwise. Come to find out that these and other units that do grid tie send out pings to the grid to make sure it is a stable connection every time there's a switch between grid and battery power. And again, each time the solar connects and disconnects. So every morning and every night it would send a ping to my meter, and they saw that as feeding power back into the grid. Now these pings were a few watts going into the meter. They considered this as feedback, forced me to disconnect the grid input to the inverter. So instead of having a direct grid connection to this inverter, I had to rewire my entire system to do something else. So what did I do? I'm using an EcoFlow backup system in the other room to supply grid power to this. Instead, since the EcoFlow physically can't feed back to the grid since it has no grid tie features unlike these larger inverters. And that fixes the problem. It makes things a bit more complicated because now I'm running an inverter into an inverter, but this has benefits as well because now I can run the house on either system by simply throwing a switch. As some of you already know, this is EcoFlow's new 12 kilowatt DPUX or Delta Pro Ultra X home backup power station, and combined with the new Smart Home Panel 3, which I have mounted on the wall. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's right there. In my case, it's actually the Smart Gateway, which is just a smaller version of the Smart Home Panel 3 with less circuits, since I'm not replacing my entire home main breaker box. I really only needed 6 circuits, so I got the smaller, cheaper, easier to install Smart Gateway. So I'm going to use Smart Home Panel 3 and Smart Gateway interchangeably, and I'm also going to call this the EcoFlow system because I don't want to keep using abbreviations. It's this combined with the home panel. One of the cool things about this product is, first of all, you don't have to cut any cables or crimp anything or do fuses or any of that. You buy the head unit, you buy as many batteries as you want, you stack them up, and you plug the thing into your house. It's really kind of like that simple. Now, if you get the Smart Gateway, which I have the input box here, and then I had the hardwire up and around my door frame into the next room where I have the Smart Gateway on the wall, and that plugs into the house remotely and powers everything on this half of the property with the EcoFlow. So one of the major upsides to the EcoFlow system is that it installs very quickly. It can actually all be done in one day by a competent HOBO electrician, assuming that you already have everything on hand that you need to go. Now, because I live in the middle of nowhere where electricians are in short supply, and I really wanted to DIY the process myself to live through it so I can report to you guys, I did do it with some help, and it wasn't that difficult. However, EcoFlow does offer installation assistance, including permits, to get it installed in your home within 7 days. Now, this is obviously assuming in your area you have an available local installer that's not booked up for months, but most city folks should have this in place from delivery to online in about 7 days. Now, I've been running my DPUX with 5, you can count them, 6 kilowatt hour batteries for 30 kilowatt hours total for 24/7 for the past 6 months, and it has been flawless through several firmware updates. I've plugged it into a dedicated 6 kilowatt hour high voltage solar array on the roof of this building, and I've only had one time where the inverter shut off for no reason and nothing was in the log, so I just pushed the button and it started working again. Now, this system is actually responsible for running 4 buildings, including this one, with several mini splits, several refrigerators, a big ass coffee machine, microwave, huge TV, high-end gaming PC, the 10 amp pool pump in the summertime, everything in a guest trailer, and about 2 dozen or so LED household lights. So the EcoFlow is no slouch, and I've never heard the fans run once, even with all that going on. It's running right now. You can't hear it. It's not making any noise, and it's running about 800 watts load. This is unlike the DIY inverter system that sounds like a jet taking off every time somebody uses the microwave in the house. In fact, I have 2 big heavy steel doors right here on each side of me, and I have to close both of them in order to film in that other room. When that thing kicks on, it just overwhelms the sound of my microphone. So I have to close both doors when I film in there, because if somebody kicks something on in the house, boom, super loud, and then I have to start over again. So in other words, it's definitely too darn loud.
I'm afraid you're just too darn loud. Next, please.
The EcoFlow also has a lower idle consumption when compared to that same 12 kilowatt hour size DIY inverter. The idle consumption on this is less than the one that runs my home. So not only is this virtually silent, it's actually more efficient. Now let's compare pricing between the two, because EcoFlow is currently having a spring sale on the DPUX bundles with and without the smart panel system, and I do have an exclusive discount code that's going to knock an additional $300 off of whatever you buy. So let's compare the two systems. The equivalent DPUX bundle with 4 6 kilowatt hour batteries and free shipping runs about $12K. So if you add in a 200 amp smart gateway, which I highly recommend over a basic transfer switch, it does add another $2,000 or so to the total. But if you want a fully automated backup system with remote Wi-Fi access, 20 millisecond switchover, power monitoring at the circuit level, all the fancy graphs, the consumption charts you get in the app, it's totally worth it. So to compare the 20 kilowatt hour DIY system that has the 12K EG4 clone, the cost is about $15K versus $12K, yet this is easier to install. It has a larger battery. You're getting an extra 4 kilowatt hours for the same or less money. You can still add that smart gateway panel and still be $1,000 ahead. And with that, you get the 5-year warranty and free live installation support on top. They will walk you through over the phone if you need help. Now, say that the DPUX is too rich for your blood. You can still get a really good deal on the previous model called the Delta Pro Ultra or DPU, and that's actually what I'm sitting on right now. The DPU has a smaller 7200 watt inverter, so if you have large loads, you may need to pair two together. I did run a pair of these with 4 batteries for over a year, and besides some initial teething issues, it worked great. Just be aware that the AC idle consumption for the older model is higher, and if you do have to run 2 of them simultaneously to power up loads to 14 kilowatts, that the idle consumption doubles as well. Okay, so let's compare the Delta Pro Ultra X to the original Delta Pro Ultra. Now, the batteries for the Delta Pro Ultra X and this are identical, so there's no difference between the two. They are interchangeable. So the 7200 watt Delta Pro Ultra with the same 4 6 kilowatt hour batteries for 24 kilowatts total is quite a bit less expensive than the newer DPUX. The original Delta Pro Ultra with the same 4 batteries and my $300 discount code brings this down to under $10,000. So yeah, if you really don't need the 12 kilowatt inverter of that and 7200 watts will do, which it will for most families, most homes, you can actually save $2,000 by going with this instead of that. And that makes it around 1/3 cheaper than that 12 kilowatt DIY system with 20 kilowatt hours of batteries. Of course, when you start adding discount batteries to that system, it does start bringing the price down per kilowatt hour. But we need to compare apples to apples here of similar sizes and similar size inverters, because most people hear the price of this and they think it's actually way more expensive than a DIY system, but it's not when you compare similar specs. You also get a 5-year warranty from one company instead of going multiple different weird years of warranties with all these other components that you have to slap together. You also get the option of installing the smart home panel or smart gateway and wiring into your home, which you don't get with a DIY system. That allows you to do full integration, real easy circuit level controls. You get a state-of-the-art app. You get regular firmware updates, and that's just something you don't get from any DIY system. So when the DPUX first came out with the new Smart Home Panel 3, there was no support for this older model to work with it. So I basically had to do a rush install of the new version to test this product because I was running this. So I had to do the entire swap from this to that, and the Smart Home Panel 2 to Smart Home Panel 3 in like the 2.5 days. And basically this building had no power. It was a real pain in the butt. But I got it done, and now we're all switched over. Fortunately, EcoFlow has recently updated the firmware on this and the Smart Home Panel 3 Smart Gateway to allow not only this to work with the new gateway and Smart Home Panel, but it'll work simultaneously with the DPUX. So these both can work together. So if you have an older DPU, you can buy the new DPUX and hook them both up together at the same time, and that will extend the amount of inverter power you have, and then you can also pile batteries onto the original or the new one and have multiple stacks of these things, mix and match, and it's actually pretty darn cool. So those of you that spent a lot of money on the original Delta Pro Ultra, don't be sad. You can now get the new inverter with it, use your old batteries, plug it into the new smart home panel. So it all works out just fine. Now right here is the 4 kilowatt hour Delta Pro 3. I did ask if this was compatible with the new smart home panel, and unfortunately they haven't updated the firmware yet to make this work with that product. So you cannot plug this into the smart home panel to charge it. That's what I used to do. I can't do it anymore. It's kind of a bummer. I hope they do that update soon. Okay, just so you don't think I'm full of dookie, I'm going to go ahead and plug in the original Delta Pro Ultra with the Delta Pro Ultra X. Now all I have to do is plug them into the smart home panel, then turn them both on, and they will share the load. It's actually pretty cool. Just want to prove to you that this actually does work and has been updated. So yeah, I have mine crammed in back here in this cubby. There's not a lot of room to work with, but I'll show you. You can plug it right in. And then all I have to do is turn the unit on. Let's turn the unit on. I only got one battery hooked to this because I'm using the rest of the batteries in this system. So there it is, it comes on. Then all I gotta do is push this button. They will come online and share the load. Takes a minute. There it goes, click, click. You can see 150 watts coming out. Now this only has one battery on it, so it's actually gonna pull less of a load since it has less batteries. And this one's still pulling 750 because it has more batteries on it. So they do work together with the Smart Gateway, Smart Home Panel 3. That is a major firmware update, so that really opens up your options if you have the older model. Okay, so here is the new Smart Gateway. This is the version 3 of the Smart Home Panel. This is the Gateway version, which only has 6 circuits in it. So the Smart Home Panel has 24 circuits, I believe. This one has 6, and I have each one set up for a different building. So I got a 60, 60, and a 60, one for each building that this smart panel is running. And one of these 60s actually go into the inverter, which is through this box that goes into the next room. This has all been redone. I haven't painted any of this yet, so it looks horrible, but I'll get around to it someday. But this is the Smart Gateway, and now the Wi-Fi is now in the bottom part. In the old version, it was in the top. This works a lot better. I have not one time had it knock itself off of the Wi-Fi like version 2. Smart Home Panel 2, I would have a lot of issues with the Wi-Fi not staying connected. Give you an idea here of what the app looks like in action. Because you can see here, I saved $3 today on electricity according to this. Today my array just for this generated 20 kilowatt hours. You can see right now we're running 520 watts. It's late at night, everyone's asleep, so we don't have to worry about power there. Scrolling down, you can see things like percentage of grid the battery. Now this is gonna change because I put more solar and batteries on. Energy independence percentage, how much power you're pulling from the grid each day, how much solar you're generating, what you're earning per day, and what your battery charge and discharge is on each day. And here are my 3 circuits. It actually breaks down the power going out on each one of these circuits right now. So the lab, which is this room, doing about 300 watts. The game room, which is another building, doing 150. And then the fortress, which is the next room over that does the inverter, is pulling none right now because it's running off its own batteries. On this other screen, you can see I'm running a Delta Pro Ultra X. And then you can hit that and it will show you your mode, discharging and stuff like that. One of the cool things, you can get great detail per hour as to what your system is doing with the Delta Pro Ultra and Ultra X, which you don't get with a DIY system. You can see here today my output was 14.3 kilowatt hours. You solar nerds who want to know everything that your solar array is doing, this is very detailed. It shows you a graph that goes from the time the sun comes up to the time the sun goes down. It tells you how much power each one of your arrays are doing. So you can see I have 2 separate arrays. One did 9 kilowatt hours, the other one did 10 kilowatt hours. I have them balanced as much as I can get them. Then of course you can do things like week, month, and year, and it tells you everything that you're doing. It's just very detailed. This to me is worth the money alone of getting the smart home panel system. So if you're interested in these products, EcoFlow is currently having a spring sale going on right now through the end of March 2026. And they have up to 62% off some of their products. So now is a really good time during the spring sale if you do not have a backup power system to go ahead and get one because of all the things that are probably going to be coming up this spring and summer for a lot of us. So make sure you got backup power so next time there's a big storm, you're not caught off guard. If you're interested, I am putting a link in the description of this video to the spring sale. Also have some links there to the Delta Pro Ultra, Delta Pro Ultra X, and Smart Home Panel, along with the code that'll knock $300 off. I'll have to double check, but I do believe I have a generic code that'll work on everything else on the website. So if I have that, I'll also put that in the description box below. Thanks for watching. Until next time.
Odin commands you to like and subscribe, and clean my litter box.